elected government under the leadership of the then President Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. The political legitimacy of government derives the autonomous constituent institutions, legislative, judicial and executive, combined for the national common good and through public elections and citizens' consent. According to lawyer Mbai, the AFPRC junta members had approached him 3 times to take up the Attorney General and Minister of Justice role, but he rejected the offer. But after a long contemplation, under circumstances of the coup, he decided to take up the responsibility. As the newly set up military government needed a Ministry of Justice, but however, signed a memorandum with them before accepting the role.
In order to take care of the conflict of interest that might appear to arise later.
Pour li nga xamné ni na fank nak mbolem lo xamné mu ngi jëm ci wali jawarlo aajo the conflict of interest lo xamné dana feñ gannaaw li
regarding a civil case instituted and won by Barrister Fafa Mbai on behalf of his client put here after all about his Louis Dias Construction Company Limited
ci layo bo xamné nak Barrister Fafa Mbai gagné won nako ci touri clientam
the full details of which were explained to the AFPRC during the discussions.
The
AFPRC has assured Barrister Fafa Ibai that the government of the Gambia will respect the judgments made by the relevant judicial bodies and the said and that the said case will honor and that the said case will be honored and therefore is committed to fully paying the orders and award by the Gambia Supreme Court.
Shortly, the military junta took over. They suspended the constitution and appointed civilian personalities to work in the government. Barrister Mbai told the commission that he took up the risks because he considered himself as a patriotic Gambian and a constant persuasion from leaders who encouraged him to take the role in the interests of the country.
But as a Gambian, as a patriotic Gambian, with the persuasion of eminent religious leaders, people of high caliber and respect in society. And the arguments they made to me, it was primarily the peace and stability of the country. Agreed for that reason.
Lawyer Fafa Idris Mbai served as Justice Minister and Attorney General in the First Republic, and he also served on the same post for a period of 6 months under the leadership of the AFPRC. Khadijatu Seka, iAfrica News.
The opposition party described the incident as a plot to damage the party's reputation. One Yusufa Jabang of Sukuta, who drove the UDP vehicle, is under police custody for allegedly carrying suspected cannabis and causing a damage on police vehicle in attempt to escape security checkpoint. The leader and Secretary General of the United Democratic Party, Hussein Dabo, said the vehicle in question was in fact in the hands of a mechanic for maintenance services. He explained that one of the workers at the mechanical garage who took out the vehicle got panicked upon arrival at the police because he was not in possession of a driving license, leading to his arrest. Lawyer Dabo smelled some foul play in how the incident was handled by the police.
Following day, in fact, one day break, because it was still Saturday, a search was conducted on the vehicle. A dog officer in the name of Kopta was among people searching, and this officer Banja, Lamin Banja, was also present with the person who was driving the vehicle, who are taking away the vehicle, and when they searched, no drugs were found. In fact, I read in the paper today that they said 3 wraps, but our information was that not a single wrap was found on the vehicle. And when conducted further search, and at the back seat, they found 7 seeds of what is suspected to be the cannabis sativa seeds. And the gentleman insisted to say that he did not put it there and he was innocent.
According to Dabo, the whole incident is calculated to tarnish the image of the party.
If someone on his frolic uses our vehicle without our knowledge and you want to pin that on UDP, I think that will be most outrageous. I think that is very ingenious. And of course, I'd like to take a quote from the spokesperson that notwithstanding that this, season, political season, those are not the type of tactics that we get involved in. And I want to tell you, gentlemen of the press, that about 3 months ago, I had intelligence report or intelligence information that I should advise Modu Sabali, Ibrahim Adiba, Karafa Sonko, Honorable Saho, Yakumba Jaite, and myself, we should be very careful where we park our vehicles. Even if we take our vehicles to car wash, we must make sure that somebody stays in the vehicle. Because the scheme now is, particularly me, the scheme now is to plant incriminating materials on us. And for Sabali, Diba, Saho, Yakumba, to silence them.
He questioned the motive behind making the United Democratic Party responsible for the alleged drug trafficking. The opposition leader recalled in the past instances of army vehicles being used to transport bags of cannabis without anyone being held responsible. Many a times, he added, ambulances were also used to ferry drugs and the Ministry of Health was not held responsible for it, let alone the cases with the government vehicles. For iAfrica TV, Binta Jallo.
As the Gambia is not an exception to natural disasters and Hydrometer, ECOWAS officials came together to discuss with the country's Vice President, Dr. Issa Toure, to find ways to improve Hydrometer and disaster issues in the West African sub-region. The Commissioner of Social Affairs and Gender at the ECOWAS Commission, Siga Fatima Jain, described the meeting as important, noting that it will help the member states to work together to reduce disaster-related issues. Commissioner Jain said it is a privilege for the Gambia as a country to be part of the meeting.
I think the Vice President and the Minister are very encouraged because this is something that is really needed in Gambia and that they're happy that we are actually having the meeting in Gambia. It's a privilege for Gambia to have this meeting, and it's a need that they also have, but also Gambia is going to be showcased as a country where we can use the technical information that we are discussing to improve the disaster risk and to also improve the Hydrometer issues, make sure that we tackle them before they get big by doing predictions in terms of knowing when the rain is coming, how much will come so that the farmers will be prepared, knowing which areas will be flooding so people can avoid them. So these are the things that we will be discussing at the technical level.
Siga Fatima Jain added that it is important to work on risk reduction to make sure that they are able to dig floods, fires and other natural disasters in countries before they strike. Commissioner of Agriculture and Environment at the ECOWAS Commission said the meeting is important and strategic as it will help strengthen the capacity of Hydrometer and disaster in ECOWAS countries.
Because it's very important for this service to have the capacity to collect data, to analyze the data, and to prepare the good recommendation for high markers to decide and to assure the protection the efficiency for all population in our country.
Many West African countries do not yet have enough hydrological capacity to collect, process, and disseminate climate information and early warning to vulnerable communities. As a result, the proceedings of the ECOWAS Hydrometer and Disaster Risk Reduction Platform, which was established in 2018, is an ECOWAS mission with contributions from the government of Cote d'Ivoire, World Bank and European Union, among others, to address the issues of hydromet and natural disasters in African countries. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am DCC.
The recent increment of basic commodities has raised a great concern for Gambians, especially ordinary citizens. Consumers, traders, and vendors have blamed one another for the sudden hike in prices of the commodities. According to the Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment, CDKM Keita, the pandemic has scaled out the global production level and the international commodity prices have been surging from April 2020. Mr. Keita said the external factors are responsible for the rise in prices of essential commodities, adding that it is beyond their control.
As can be observed from above, these external factors account for more than 80% of the increase in the domestic prices. These external factors are the principal cause of the increase and are beyond our control and can only be ameliorated when the global production and associated shock to the supply chain recovers. According to the World Food Programme, as of April 16, 2021, food prices in West Africa have jumped by more than 30% since last year, to their highest level in nearly a decade due to coronavirus lockdowns and a decline in production. The Economist Global Commodity Index, food has increased by 39% in the year to April 13, 2020. This was sourced from the Economist magazine as of 17th of April on Saturday.
According to Yankuba Dabo, the Commissioner General of the Gambia Revenue Authority, they have created a direct delivery fee for all business individuals.
We also have given them the opportunity for what we call a direct delivery facility, DD. It means that for those who are not very much involved in the international trade, if you have goods at the port, you take care of the expenses of the ports and other stakeholders. Your goods are there, and at the time we know life is difficult, you don't have the money to pay, you will apply, and then the GRA will give you what we call the facility, direct delivery facility. You will have these goods taken out of the port to your premises or to your shop, and you can make sales after 30 days, then you can come back and pay. And I think this is a big burden, that was lifted from the heads of the business community, in the sense that instead of you pay upfront, we are now allowing you to take the goods with you, and then after 1 month or 45 days, you come back and settle it.
The Director General for Gambia Competition, Consumer Protection Commission, Amadou Cisse, revealed that they have engaged suppliers to rest on the treasure on what a wholesale should be. The ministry promised to work with the government to do everything possible to ensure that the essential commodities are available, accessible, and affordable. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
Following the presentation of the Elections Bill 2020 before the National Assembly, the Minister of Justice, Dauda A. Jallow, gives an overview of the bill before the Parliament today. The Attorney General is required to assist and provide technical as well as relevant information for the purpose of the consideration of the bill. As diaspora voting has been a concern for Gambians, Dauda A. Jallow said the provision of allowing diaspora voting is left with IEC to come with clear regulations.
There is a provision allowing diaspora voting. It subjected it to IEC coming up with a clear regulation as to how they wanted to go about it, through inter-party consultations and possibly cabinet. But the fact that diaspora voting is allowed is provided for in the bill as well, in clear terms. But IEC is required to come up with clear regulations as to, for example, how would they choose country A and not B, where there are Gambians residing in both countries? What will be the criteria of selecting the countries? Probably there are regulations, we expect also they need to tell us how are they going to hire the electoral officials in those countries. places of carrying out these elections. A lot of things.
However, the nominated member Yakumba Jaite raised concerns as to how the diaspora voting will be done despite the lack of laws governing the process of the registration. In response, the Attorney General said the ministry has reminded the IEC about some of the challenges with regards to diaspora voting in the Constitution.
That we sent to IEC. As far as I'm aware, it is the ministry that spotted it and brought it to the IEC's attention. When it was brought to my attention, I asked my people immediately to inform them, let them write to them and inform them there is a challenge with respect to diaspora voting that we have spotted in the Constitution. So if they are saying they have sent and asked us to amend, because the request for amendment of the section, I received it on my desk, I think last week or a week before. That's very recent. After we wrote to them and showed them this provision, they replied and said, if this is a problem, then we recommend it be amended.
The Elections Bill 2020 has been moved to the second reading stage for lawmakers to debate on the merits and the principles of the bill sometimes last month. As critics say, the current laws don't create a conducive environment for free, fair and transparent elections. This bill, if passed, will replace the existing laws in the country governing elections. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Daisy.
According to the 297th National Situation Report since the confirmation of the first case of the coronavirus disease in the Gambia, the total number of deaths stands at 170. As of Tuesday evening, 51 new cases were registered, taking the total number of COVID-19 cases ever confirmed in the country to 5,784. This is what Rafaela, a network of locally elected women in Africa, aims to counter with the support from the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation. Saturday, the United Nations Development Programme representative to the Gambia said the face masks will be useful in reducing the number of cases.
This donation has, as I said, is very timely because we know we have a vaccine campaign already rolled out by the government of the Gambia with the participation of the people, and we appeal to everybody who is here and who is listening to go and get the vaccine. But we also know that while we are getting the vaccine, we still need our face mask to continue social distancing and to continue the struggle together against the COVID. And we are very delighted to stand here on the name of the United Nations Office of the South-South Cooperation that we supported, and I cannot thank also Thomas who helped us, our procurement officer, to make sure that we stand here today to receiving this material and these face masks, and that will for sure help to reduce the number of cases that we are having and move forward in the achievement of the SDGs as part of the priorities that we have.
Rahim Malik Low, the president of Rafaela, who doubles as the mayor of the Banjul City Council, highlighted the importance of their intervention.
These donated face masks are not a small thing, because right now when you go out, you see that a single face mask can be costing $10. So if you take out one packet of face mask containing 2,000 pieces, multiply it by $10, that will give you $20,000. That 20,000 multiply it by 200,000, you will know that these standing items here right now are very important. But what we want is the ones going to receive this mask to use it as expected and to benefit from it as well, because the donors want us to give it to the deserving ones.
From the receiving point, Madam Lowe said that the mask will be further distributed to targeted regions, markets, health centers, and other public places across the country. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
Fafambai says he was told to present a man with 2 sureties as a condition to fulfill his bail. He adds that it was Malamin Jane that bailed him from the police for $4 million, and he now tells the commission what happened when he appeared at Algali Commission.
Now, at the commission, the conclusion of the commission was that my tax liability is $1.5 million.
Ci gannaaw na commission bi lim jeexale mooy suma naama lim tollu mu ngi dem ci $1 million ak lu tek.
I had already paid tax for the period.
Man fay na naama sax ci waxtu.
And by the analysis made by Panel Car Foster, It was found that my tax was overpaid $50,000. Yet the commission came to the conclusion that I owe $1.5+ million.
Lambai further notes that Alaji Maritambidu bailed him out with property deeds. He recalls that he later challenged the tax liability but was asked to first pay half of what he was charged for, but says he refused. In 1996, he took the matter to Supreme Court that the charge against him contravened the law and was irrelevant, but it was struck out by the military decree. He instead received another heavy loss in return.
So by writ of Ferre Fascis, dated 9 January 1996, the Inspector General of Police was commanded to seize and sell that of my goods and chattels found anywhere within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, and caused to be levied the sum of $1,562,696, 28 butus, and also interest and cost of execution, which sum was by order of the Commission adjudged on 12 December 1995 to be paid by me.
Mr. Mbai, still reluctant to go by the Supreme Court order, filed an appeal at the Gambia Court of Appeal, but received a death threat this time around.
Then there followed threats to my life of being found 6 feet deep in the ground. The threat was first announced on Radio Gambia. The chairman has said all those advocating human rights, especially those who have just been sacked out of the government, may have to keep their mouths shut or they'll find themselves 6 feet deep.
According to him, he did not further pursue the court because he wanted to continue living. Lawyer Mbai says in January 1996, Yankuba Sonko, the Interior Minister, then officer commanding Combo Division, led a team of police officers to his residence at Fajar to serve him an eviction letter on orders of Justice Algali. He says among the things confiscated were his house, car, and furniture. For iAfrica TV, Omar Ahmadu Toure reporting.
Lawyer Hassan Martin was an independent candidate who contested in the 2011 presidential election. He later went to exile during former President Yahya Jammeh's regime. To the prominent lawyer, President Barrow's government is struggling, saying the country's economy and other institutions are going down.
Looking at what governance is about, we know that this present government, currently, if you're asking in the current situation, they are struggling. There is a lot of disorganization within them, and also, the government looks confused in terms of its agenda, its policies. So right now, if you look at it, the economic policies or the economy is very going down, and Gambians are struggling with their standard of living and how they are living. Secondly, also, the law and order also is completely in disarray. And thirdly, also, if you look at our institutions like the Department of Lands and Fisheries, those departments also are completely down. So in essence, we see incompetence all around us, and we don't see the proper leadership that will inspire and move this country forward, because definitely a president who is out of touch and who cannot come and give account on issues is very difficult for some of us, knowing that we believe in standard and moving this country.
Martin, who played an important role in the 2016 presidential election while on exile, said they want to put in place a national unity government that will bring an alliance of national parties.
We are trying to make sure that we put our house in order. We have learned our lesson 2016, whereby a lot of mistakes have been done. So we feel that this time around we have to handle things professionally for the people. And the agenda to be Gambians to take ownership. What we want to put in place is a national unity government that will bring an alliance of national parties that will form a national unity government, give us a fresh start for a new dispensation, and make sure the institutions start delivering and fight the corruption culture here. It's frustrating, and it's going to be an agenda that will help Gambians. This is it. It's the people that will take ownership, not us.
However, Lawyer Martin also lamented the issue of the IEC in relation to the voter registration.
But again, from the word go now, registration becomes an issue. It's concerning when you see the IEC saying that, well, they cannot procure this, they cannot procure that, and elections need material. It's a fundamental pillar. They should have put their house in order 3-4 years ago. you know. So now, okay, registrations we are expecting, that's what they said in May, end of May, we are expecting. But registration also is a process whereby we don't want any Gambian to be disenfranchised. We want Gambians to get their voters card and have their right to vote for any party or any individual that they want. So this is what we believe in, as I say, but really the institution is struggling with the IEC, the reform. For us, I always say, we expect that a good, vibrant IEC with a good, well-equipped IEC will come in the next government.
The political aspirant further promised that when they come into power, their first agenda will be to get the mindsets of the Gambians right. Their mandate, according to him, will be to set standards, law and order, and self-discipline. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
The vehicles will help strengthen the patrol activities of the Gambian Navy along the coast of the River Gambia. The Gambian Navy is responsible for patrolling the coastline against illegal activities ranging from human smuggling, trafficking, among others. Bon Banisht, liaison officer of the German Federal Police, says the 2 cars came in as grants from the German government to support the work of the Navy.
The states of the European Union are financing a project realized by our Spanish colleagues from the Guardia Civil, and the Gambian Navy profits from trainings in order to improve the surveillance and the protection of Gambia's smiling coast. I have the great honor to hand over 2 functional brand new Toyota cars, thank you, worth $4.6 million as a grant from German taxpayers, you may say, to our Gambian partners represented by the Gambian Navy. These both cars are suitable in all meanings to support the service of the Navy as an appropriate operating resource.
Madani Senghor, commander of the Gambian Navy, commended the gesture, saying that it will help in curbing human smuggling, among others.
Such gestures are necessitated by the need to curb the challenge of illegal migration, human trafficking, and human smuggling by boats. It is, however, important to note that the major drivers of irregular migration, or the push factors in our region, include, but not limited to, the unemployment and the lack of opportunity for the youths, who are the main participants in such ventures. Such journeys have recently contributed to exacerbating the political, economical, and social challenges of both the countries of departure and the countries of disembarkation.
Meanwhile, Mrs. Isabel Bloch of Charter Affairs in the Gambia emphasized the importance of the Gambian Navy in terms of surveillances, adding that the Navy's work cannot be effective without using proper equipment. The Gambian Navy helps in activities taking place along the coastal areas of the country, ranging from rescuing people, addressing human smuggling and trafficking, among others. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Mariama Cham.
Trachoma is the world's leading cause of infectious blindness and is part of a group of conditions known as neglected tropical disease. According to the Health Ministry, the elimination of trachoma as a public health problem in the Gambia is a significant contribution towards the attainment of the National Development Plan and the Sustainable Development Goals. The program coordinator of trachoma disease at the Health Ministry, Sajo Kanyi, said the country is ready to tackle the resurgence of trachoma and other neglected tropical diseases.
Level of eye care delivery in the Gambia is at 3 levels. One, in the community, we have the village health workers, we have the nyateros, we also have the community-based champions. These are there to provide awareness, to provide information and education about eye health, and also to provide refer patients to the community. We've been also collaborating with the traditional practitioners. As you know, in the villages, most of the point of call for many people is the traditional practitioners. What we did was to collaborate with these traditional practitioners. At the end of the day, we've seen them referring patients to the hospital. We've also used the traditional communicators, the Kanyalangos, in the community to spread eye health messages to the people. So all this played a very important part. And as I'm talking to now, we have 24 primary centers in the Gambia where ophthalmic nurses are based. Their role is to be able to see eye patients and also conduct simple minor operations like lid surgery. In the 7 health regions, we have 7 secondary eye units which are manned by cataract surgeons, and their role is to ensure that their role is not only based at the facility but also responsible for the eye health of the region. And all referrals of these patients come down to Seaside, which is the main tertiary center. So we have the infrastructure, we have the capacity, we have the human sources. All what we need is more support for the trachoma surveillance.
Mr. Kanyi explained the risk factors of the disease on patients who suffered from trachoma, saying women and children are more vulnerable to the disease.
The patients, first of all, they will complain of, as I told you, it starts with simple conjunctivitis. If it is not treated, repeated infection leads to trachoma. They will have red eyes, they will have discharges, they have tearing eyes, they have irritations, they find it very difficult to walk even under the sun. This happens in children. As they grow older, what happens is there is scarring of the eyelids, the eyelashes, instead of turning outside, they are turning inwards, rubbing against the cornea. So if we don't do the correction, what will happen at the end of the day? They will end up having a ruptured globe and the patient will lose the sight. So basically, these are the complications that patients suffer from trachoma. So with proper treatment, you can stop the infection and also correct the inturning eyelashes. Instead of rubbing on the eyeball, you can correct the situation. The patients will not suffer from that blindness complication.
Trachoma is the disease of the eye, caused by infection with the bacteria Chlamydia trachomatis. The disease is a public health problem in 44 countries and is responsible for the blindness of about 1.9 million people, according to the WHO. A March 2020 data appear to show that 137 million people living in trachoma endemic areas are at high risk of blindness. Trachoma disease has been an epidemic for the Gambia, and the fight against the disease began decades ago. In 1986, a medical survey found that trachoma was the 3rd leading cause of blindness in the Gambia. However, the Ministry of Health described the elimination of the disease in a press statement on Tuesday as a milestone which resulted from a strong partnership that supported the implementation of the Gambia Trachoma program. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am DCC.
About 200 from the list of suspected criminals were discharged for not having connection with any crime, leaving 200 more in police custody since the launch of the operation targeting criminal hideouts. Relying on the daily statistics of this arrest, police spokesperson Superintendent Lamin Jai noted that crimes are noticeably going down.
Well, using the figures that we have been registering from the beginning of the Operation Zero, you will realize that as we continue, the figures were dropping. It went to a point, in fact, in West Coast region, we patrolled at some point in time with no arrest. In Banjul, you patrol the whole day or 2 days or so with no arrest. And then same thing applies in KM, and that tells you that the trend is kind of going down, because at the beginning when we started the operation, we were able to arrest up to 117 people, if I remember well. And so if you go down the line, you realize you are not arresting at all. That means, of course, most of the criminal hideouts are being dismantled, and so therefore the people are already either under custody or being processed in court, so therefore the rate has to go down.
He explains that the arrests were not randomly done. Instead, the police rely on its intelligence to identify places being used as safe haven for people who have either committed or are about to commit crimes.
Really, our officers, when they go out on patrol, they have they gather intelligence first before they go out on patrol. And so the intelligence will point out to certain locations and certain areas which are frequented by people who commit crime or people who are about to commit crime. And so these are the areas that they target. Not everyday people going about their business. Those are not their targets. But if they go to certain places that are part of the intelligence that they have gathered, then they will find individuals there. In fact, at certain instances, they found people with evidence of suspected stolen properties, or they found them with instruments that are breaking and stealing instruments. So those are all evidences to show that these individuals within this particular location are connected in one way or the other to some form of crime, and therefore they need to be subjected to further investigation.
The police force is now looking up to expanding this form of joint operation to the rest of the regions.
Very well. In fact, as we are on this Operation Zero, although the fact that the numbers are coming from the reports that we are receiving are coming from, most of them are coming from Greater Banjul and West Coast region, is the fact or the reason why, in fact, the operation is coordinated within these three regions. But simultaneously also, other regions are conducting their own patrols, because the same services that we have here are also existing in all the regions, and they are also having their own task force, and they are patrolling within their regions as well.
Among these cases from the patrol operations, non-documented immigrants were handed to the Immigration Department regularizations, while those with suspected drugs were referred to the Drug Law Enforcement Agency. Meanwhile, more than 60 people have been charged for crimes relating to going armed in public, breaking and stealing, drinking and driving, among others. For iAfrica News, I am Fatoumata Kasim.
At last, justice is served for the death of an African American who was killed by a former Minneapolis police officer last year, as Derek is convicted of murder and manslaughter in George Floyd's death. The overall mood for many seems to be expressing frustration at the system that they said enabled his death and other Black Americans. Prominent figures including Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton took to social media expressing relief that at last Chauvin was held accountable for his actions. Tones of well wishes were also showered on George Floyd's family. Now that Derek is dancing to his own tune, American activist Maya Riley said they have got a little bit of justice that they deserved.
We got justice! For once, we got a little bit of what we deserve. Amen. To be seen as people who deserve to breathe. Amen. But look what we didn't get. Peace of mind. That we would get a jury verdict that said the prosecution proved its case. Because we knew before a jury was even impaneled that it was murder. But today we celebrate that it's justice and not just us.
America experienced a heavy movement of protest last year when Floyd was killed. His death sparked mass protests in almost every city in the U.S. and drew attention around the world, leading to the creation of Black Lives Matter movement. Chauvin was found guilty on 3 charges of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter, and could serve up to 75 years in prison.
If you are wondering why we keep being killed, look right here. They come to our neighborhood. They come to our city. They open this shit. And they're tough.
The Gambia's Truth Commission is at advanced stage of its public hearings on the gross human rights violations, extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearance of journalists, interference in the justice system, among other issues during Jammeh's era. The Commission is expected to produce a report containing the findings and recommendations when it completes hearing in July. The document that will be submitted to the President will guide the justice and reparation process to ensure national healing. The executive secretary of the TRRC, Babagale Jallo, said the commission will recommend for the government to prosecute individuals who were more responsible for violations of fundamental human rights of victims.
Certainly, the role of the TRRC is to, after exploring, identifying all kinds of human rights abuses, to make recommendations to the government that certain individuals who were more responsible for these human rights violations need to be prosecuted. And the TRRC is going to make those recommendations. We will certainly recommend that some people be prosecuted, and that could be some form of justice for the victims.
Jallo said the commission is helping victims who need medical assistance and scholarships. According to him, prosecution of perpetrators and executing institutional reforms will be left to the government to act on the recommendations given to them.
As far as prosecutorial justice is concerned, taking people to court, that would be left to the government to do. And I believe they should do it. I believe that the Gambian people should insist that the recommendations of prosecutions that will come out of the TRRC are implemented by the government.
The Truth Commission revealed several human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearance of victims, as well as journalists, among a host of violations on the fundamental human rights of victims. TRRC was established by an Act of Parliament to investigate and establish an impartial historical record of human rights violations, but to also consider reparations for victims of abuses, promote reconciliation, and a non-reoccurrence. For Africa TV News, I am Binta Fati.
As today marks 40 days since the death of the former IGP Mahmoud Job, a Quran recitation was done by his loved ones at his residence in Chincho Alaji. The death of late IGP Job leaves a void not only in the Job family but to the country at large. Papa Aliou Nyang, a relative to the late Mahmoud Job, described him as an incredible person who was always doing good things to his fellow humans.
Mahmoud was like a blood brother to me. Whatever occasion we have, he would request for my presence and leave everything in my hands. This child you see standing beside me is the last born, and he named him after his in-law, Alhaji Kebandao, a father to my wife and his wife, Mariam Andao. Mahmoud was an incredible person, and wherever we are, we will keep talking about him because he was doing good things all along until God took him away. This is why we are never tired talking about his deeds, and wherever we are always praying for him. May Allah have mercy on his soul, grant him the highest place in Jannah.
Imam Haiba Hydra, the Imam of the Banjul International Airline, preached on the importance of doing good deeds as a human.
I won't say much about Alhaji Mahmoud Job because the Imam alone is enough as a witness. If an Imam witnesses someone on the side of truth and deen, whatever someone else say will be considered as a bonus. The gathering, as we've seen since he died to date, shows who Mahmoud Job was. This should be a lesson to everyone present here, because as a human being, you don't know anything what will be said in your absence. And for Mahmoud Job, all we are saying in his absence is the goods he did.
Mr. Job was appointed Inspector General of Police on the 9th July 2018. Few days after the resignation of Landing Kinte. The late IGP Job has served in various units of the police force and is said to have been wealthy with vast and rich policing experience. Alhaji Mahmoud Job died on 13th March 2021 after battling a brief illness. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amendao.
The setting of this public infrastructure has given the residents of Jambur the signal of hope that the government is at last willing to plow back their taxes for the people.
The setting of this public infrastructure has given the residents of Jambur the signal of hope that the government is at last willing to plow back their taxes for the people. During the launching of the project, the Ministry of Transport, Work and Infrastructure noted that the road construction was commissioned to ease communication among the communities in the areas as well as with the outside settlements. Fatou Bojang, a market vendor in Jambur, recalled that her community had lived in hard-to-reach situation forever, making their living very challenging.
Since before we were born, this road has been like this. Women used to wake up as early as 3 to 4 a.m. looking for transportation, but to no avail. Sometimes we walk by foot to an extent that some will sit to rest due to a long-distance trekking. We thank God that the government plans to construct this road for us, and we are thankful for that because it will be a development for us and also a development to the entire country. Because when we say business, we are talking about whether you need good roads.
Lamin Bojang, a commercial taxi driver, reminds the government to be focused and fulfill its promises with respect to time, preferably before the rainy season, during which the hurdles in the transportation industry are expected to multiply.
If the road is ready before the rain comes, it would help a lot. Because when the rain comes, water enters the vehicle, thereby making it uncomfortable for passengers. That is how we complain to the authorities and to our representatives. Then just 2 days ago, the laying of the foundation for the construction was done.
The complications in going to and from Jambur and her neighboring areas are strongly in the history of natives. One of them is Khadijatu Jallow, in whose view there is no difference and that fingers are crossed.
We will benefit a lot when the road is constructed, because you will see that during the rainy season, when you walk up and down, you will walk from Jambur to Farato, which is really difficult. The only thing we want now is to see the construction of the road so that those walking and going to school won't be late, and some of us also going to the market won't be late as well.
Many important feeder roads across the country have been left dilapidated and barely accessible, or in some instances non-existent. This has posed challenges to men, women and children needing to get to places beyond their own communities to earn their livings or for medical and educational appointments. The road construction will connect Jambur along the Sukuta Jamanjeli Highway to Farato, along the Westfield Beckham Highway in the West Coast region, to eventually lessen the heavy traffic on the major highway. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Mariama Cham.
The market for second-hand goods is booming mainly due to the cooperative advantages in the aspect of price with the brand new goods in the same market. Nonetheless, the notion that these already used materials are brought in for civilized form of dumping while the West is being freed from the garbage. Mr. Da Costa is one of the importers of second-hand materials who disagrees with the classification of the market as a dump site. For him, the market operates in response to the demand of the buyers.
The market would require for someone to go to the street and pick it. Now then, we might call it Africa is the dumping ground, but it is required of the market. For example, if I happen to know that if I bring this product, I'm not going to sell it, then I will not bring it. But if the requirement in the market requires that I have to go in the street and pick it, then obviously I have to go there and pick it. If I couldn't have it, I will not take it. But the truth is, mainly it is not for the purpose of making Africa the dumping ground is the reason why people pick those items and come. It's a means of survival.
The importation of already contaminated goods from other continents, in the view of Mr. Da Costa, is enabled by the lack of production industries that would have given a genuine option in the market.
And again, Africa could have been, for instance, like if we are having factories in Africa that are producing fridges. Already in some other countries it's happening. For example, let's give an example of Nigeria. They are producing cars. Now, you don't bring cars to certain years of made. In Senegal, our close neighbor, you don't bring cars which is above 10 years in the market. So obviously, they have a limitation of this. But in the Gambia, we did not have anything close to that. Now, you cannot tell the people that you will not bring anything what we don't have. So obviously, it's a two-ball game that we have to talk to different people. The one that brought the product, who are you bringing the product for? The one who buys the product, what is the person requesting for? And the one that sells the product. Because the person who does the selling, obviously for me, my understanding in business is the service to the people. So you serve the people based on what they want you to do for them.
Mariamaba, a vendor for the goods in question, described the derogative classification of second-hand goods as a mere concept from critics.
Concept la rek. Man lolu la japp dama japp nit ku nekk ak noy xelaté.
It is just a concept. That is my thought, because everyone has their own thoughts. People have been into this business for a long time. There are so many people in this country, or even outside of this country, who became wealthy through this business. But we all have our own concepts. We all believe in something. If you believe that the second-hand materials are not good and people are wearing it, it depends on the kind of clothes you have. Because the one sending you the second-hand clothes, if he or she knows.
The Gambia has a small consumer base which limits opportunities from U.S. franchises. Several Gambian businesses have expressed interest and have participated in franchising trade conventions. This does not, however, change the fact that the only marketing and advertising firms are under vibrant operational muscles. With the increasing pace of connectivity through mobile phones with access to social media, the cost associated with reaching consumers is low. For iAfrica News, I am Fatoumata Kasim.
Established in 1951, the International Organization for Migration is the leading organization in the field of migration, working closely with governmental and non-governmental partners. With 173 member states, a further 9 states holding observer status and offices in over 100 countries, which includes the Gambia. The organization is dedicated to the promotion of human and orderly migration for the benefit of all. iAfrica TV engaged Public Relations Officer of the International Organization for Migration, Miko Alasas, on some of their intervention areas in the Gambia since 2017.
Since 2017, IOM has supported the return and or reintegration of upward of over 5,000 returnees. A majority of these are through a program that we call the EU-IOM Joint Initiative for Migrant Protection and Reintegration. This is funded by the EU Emergency Trust Fund for Africa, and other programs as well, funded through different donors like the German government, the Swiss government. And really a majority of these, over 3,000, have returned home from Libya. We all know that many Gambians were stranded in Libya when there was a civil unrest in the country. Another 1,000 plus coming from Niger, and the rest coming from countries.
It is common to find complaints on various platforms that the International Migration Body is partly responsible for issues like deportation of youth from Europe and the encouragement of strict migration regulations. However, Mr. Alasas clarified that such misconceptions are mainly from the public regarding IOM's work.
Well, I think a lot of the complaints stem from the misunderstanding of IOM's work. So there are a few, and I'd like also to take this opportunity to clarify for the knowledge of the public. So first of all, there's a misconception that IOM is able to assist any and all returnees, and I think that's a very, very dangerous assumption because IOM, a lot of the programming we were running in the Gambia started in 2017. So first of all, we are not necessarily able to assist people who have come back home before 2017. There's also an element of if you returned home on your own, we're also not able to support you. So we can only provide reintegration assistance if your return back home was facilitated through an IOM movement or was a case referred to us by one of our partners.
He acknowledged a cordial working relationship with government, with all IOM interventions meant to complement national development initiatives. For iAfrica News, Binta Jallo.
37 policemen are prepared to handle various management assignments following their graduation from the joint initiative with the German police support. Public protest being a very important aspect of the country's democratic system, the police catered session during the training to empower participants with tactics on crowd control and management of riot. Isabel Bloch, the German charge d'affaires, says during the graduation of the police that one of the freedoms that democracy brings along is the one of expression and speech.
One of the freedoms democracy brings is the freedom of expression, the voicing of opinions, and sometimes people take to the streets to make themselves heard. As a police officer, your job is not an easy one. It is challenging, stressful, and often you have very little time to choose a response to a situation. Especially crowd control can be a challenging task. That is why the German police support team trains police officers in such tasks as crowd control. Well-prepared and trained police officers can de-escalate when tensions arise. This can strengthen the trust with the civilian population, trust that has been lost during 22 years of a dictatorship. Especially with the elections coming up this year, it is important to have well-trained and confident police officers. Confident in their own skills, but also confident enough to ask for advice and assistance from their partners when they know they need it.
Momodu Sow, the Deputy Inspector General, described the training as significant and timely in cognizance of the recent increase in public activities across the country, coupled with anticipated events such as the end-of-year presidential election and OIC conference.
The increased demands for not only police presence, but also the required for professionalism in the manner in which gatherings could be managed and handled. I had the convictions that the lessons delivered during this course were well conveyed to the trainees, putting into consideration that the trainers have international exposure, combined with the expert knowledge in the domain of public order management.
Stefan Haas, coordinator of the German police support team, said the course has given both physical and logical challenges with a lot of theoretical and tactical operations.
You are now qualified as a trainer and a leadership with a lot of new knowledge. But not only what is written down. Please teach your colleagues also in our philosophy, our principle of de-escalation, our understanding of freedom of assembly, and a lot of different approaches we taught on you. Observe the teach principles of the rule of law, human rights, and the principle of proportionality. Apply this new acquired knowledge. Pass it on to your colleagues to secure democratic guidelines. Through your actions in future, you can further improve the good reputation of the Gambian police force.
The training is part of the security sector reform, which culminated in cooperation between the Gambia and its German counterpart for possible intervention in priority areas. For iAfrica News, I am Fatoumata Kassim.
Malaria is caused by a Plasmodium parasite which is spread to people through the bites of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes. World Malaria Day is observed annually to bring global attention to the efforts being made to bring an end to malaria and mobilize additional resources and empower communities. Dr. Desta Tirune, WHO representative to the Gambia, gave the situational report of malaria in Africa, narrowing it down to the achievements made so far.
In the 2019 statistics in the World Malaria Report, it shows that 94% of the cases and deaths are occurring in this continent, Africa, while the continent contributes only to 17% of the world population. This is really enormous. At the same time, this is what we are saying is, despite the great progress made in malaria response in the region, we have made progress also. Out of the 44 countries endemic countries in the region. I'm pleased to note that the Gambia is among 6 countries that have achieved the 2020 milestones of reducing the incidence and death by 40% of the 2015 level.
Balakande, the program manager of National Malaria Control Program, said efforts in the early 21st century have been a mark of global cooperation.
As long as malaria exists, it threatens the poorest and most vulnerable and has the potential to resurge in times of public crisis like the COVID-19. Efforts to fight malaria have been a hallmark of global cooperation of the early 21st century. More than ever, we must unite to protect our hard-won gains against malaria and effectively address existing and emerging threats to global health.
Dr. Umberto, director of the Medical Research Center, recalled some of the achievements in the production of malarial vaccine and the role of stakeholders in the fight against malaria.
My colleague here, Dr. Tirune, mentioned the malaria vaccine. I've been contributing to the development of the malaria vaccine, and also the Gambia was the first country that tested the malaria vaccine here by Dr. Khalifa Bojang in Basse. And now the malaria vaccine is now almost ready to be implemented. As mentioned, there's been a pilot implementation in Ghana, Malawi, and Kenya, and it looks like, the results are not out yet, but it looks like that it has been a successful implementation, has been given to more than 1 million children.
This year's Malaria Day comes at a time when the world is battling with the spread of coronavirus. Experts, however, have called on governments to not forget about malaria despite the concerted efforts on COVID-19. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
Star GSM Electronics. Special Ramadan promotion starting from April 4.